Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Canto 3, Chapter 23, Text 55. Sangoya Samsriter Hetur Asatso Vihitodhyaya Saeva Sadhushu Krito Niksangat Tatvaya Kalpate Sangoya Sangshater Hetur Asato Vihitodhyam Saeva Sadhushu Krito Niksangatvaya Kalpate. Sangoya Samsritir Hetur Asattu Vihitodhya Saeva Sadhushu Krito Niksangatvaya Kalpate. Sangoya Samsritir Hetur Asatsu Vihitodhya Saeva Sadhushu Krito Niksangatvaya Kalpate. Premanandi here this morning? Oh, there she is. Sangoya Samsritir Hetur Asatsu Vihitodhya Saeva Sadhushu Krito Niksangatvaya Kalpate. Sangoya Samsritir Hetur Asato Vihitodhya Saeva Sadhushu Krito. Association for sense gratification is certainly the path of bondage, but the same type of association performed with a saintly person leads to the path of liberation, even if performed without knowledge. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The association of a saintly person in any way bears the same result. For example, Lord Krishna met many kinds of living entities, and some treated him as an enemy, and some treated him as an agent for sense gratification. It is generally said that the gopis were attached to Krishna for sense attractions, and yet they became first-class devotees of the Lord. Kamsa, Shishupal, Dantavakra, and other demons, however, were related to Krishna as enemies. But whether they were associated with Krishna as enemies or for sense gratification out of fear, or as pure devotees, they all got liberation. That is the result of association with the Lord, even if one does not understand who he is. The results have the same efficacy. Association with a great saintly person also results in liberation, just as whether one goes toward fire knowingly or unknowingly, the fire will make one warm. Devahuti expressed her gratefulness For although she wanted to associate with Karmavati only for sense gratification, because he was spiritually great, she was sure to be liberated by his benediction. This is chapter 23, and the discussion goes on for several other chapters. The essence of Lord Kapila Dev's teachings is devotional service. He is known for his teaching Sankhya. And the result of Sankhya is devotional service. So he's teaching devotional service because he's an incarnation of Lord Vishnu who may specialize in this branch of knowledge or that branch of knowledge or something. And this branch, that branch have one purpose, to know Krishna. The purpose of the Vedas is to know Krishna, and the main ways to know Krishna is devotional service. So he's teaching devotional service through the branch of knowledge called Sankhya. And so there's a lot of Sankhya in his teachings because he teaches Sankhya. But one more time, what's the purpose of all of that? Why is it in the Bhagavatam? Why is it important? Supposing one doesn't know Sankhya, can you engage in devotional service anyway? Absolutely. Supposing you know Sankhya, does that mean you can't engage in devotional service because you're too much in the theoretical and what's the categories of matter, and you're absorbed in the categories of matter, and so you can't see spirit, and so you can't be a devotee, or your devotion is impeded because you know too much about matter? That's not the purpose of Sankhya. It's not a make it or break it teaching. It's there because it's part of the totality of everything. And she, Devahuti, wants to know her destination and so forth. So here, this chapter is her lamentation. This is towards the end of the chapter. And she's lamenting on the one hand and extolling on the other hand. Too much attachment for her husband. Now, the purport is indicating a statement that indicates she's not a pure devotee. And specifically, she's attached to sense enjoyment with her husband, who's no longer there. And though the lamentation is he can't enjoy that sense enjoyment anymore because he's gone. He didn't die, he left. Because, anyway, for the reasons mentioned previously, he left because he was just doing a service requested of him by his father. Lord Brahma asked, please help. Please create praja that can populate this universe I just built, my dear son. So he's obliged to his father, and he performed this service. To perform the service, he required a qualified wife. The qualified wife, Lord Vishnu said, would come in 2 days, and she came, Swayambhuva Manu's daughter. And voila, just say yes. Pretty simple. So 9 daughters and 1 son. 1 son is giving her shelter. So the lamentation, the title of the chapter is Devahuti's Lamentation. She's lamenting that as if she was a worldly person, lamenting that too much attached to sense enjoyment. And I'm lamenting because I was too much attached to sense enjoyment, and now that sense enjoyment isn't there, so I'm lamenting because it's not there. As if she's an ordinary person. We discussed this, we'll say it again. When someone becomes a super excellent devotee. And as one becomes elevated, and then what to speak of super excellent, what to speak of perfect. The feature of humility doesn't diminish. The feature of humility becomes more profound. The statements of absolutely pure persons, the statements of humility of absolutely pure persons is breathtaking. And they're not just being cute. They feel themselves in ways that they express. It's not just cute or so poetic, or you're supposed to, when you're advanced, you're supposed to speak humble things, so you speak humble things. That's their experience. That's how they regard themselves in different expressions of humility. It's a nice topic. Faith increases, humility increases. Fundamental things that are the ground, the fertile, receptive place for the seed of bhakti. Those things grow and grow as the seed of bhakti grows and grows. Those features also grow. This is part of bhakti life. Say it the flip side. If someone is perceived by some as very elevated, but they're very proud, what's that? It's not very elevated. So no, someone may present themselves as a sense enjoyer or as a proud person when in fact inside they're not. And it takes a very elevated person to understand whether or not. A very nice example. Nice example. When growing up, Gadadhar Pandit, by nature, was very renounced. And Gadadhar Pandit had more than one friend. Of course, Nimai was one of his friends. But Mukunda was another one of his friends. And Mukunda knew of Gadadhar Pandit's disinclination for enjoyment. But Gadadhar Pandit knew that there was, from the village that he previously was living, there was a very elevated Vaishnava. And he spoke so highly of this very elevated Vaishnava to Gadadhar Pandit and wanted Gadadhar Pandit to meet him. So, trusting his dear friend, he went to meet him. And when he saw this personality enjoying like a wanton sense enjoyer with lavish pillows and hookah pipes and, paraphernalia for, an enjoyer, lounging around, Gadadhar is like, yikes. Mukunda's my friend. Why did he bring me here? Mukunda knew, so Mukunda started singing some verses from the Bhagavatam. And one of those verses is this celebrated verse that not so long ago we heard when Shukadeva Goswami was speaking about the merciful nature of Krishna, that how merciful is the nature of Krishna, that the Baki, the sister of Bakasura, Putana, although she came to kill Krishna, whole Baki Yata, what's the rest of the phrase? Kalakutam. Yeah. He started singing the verse. He's singing, because Mukunda was a good singer, he was singing. And when this elevated Vaishnava heard this verse and another verse, it's similar to the same verse that was spoken to Shukadeva Goswami when he went off into the forest, because it's a celebrated verse, it's an important verse. The merciful nature of Krishna verse. And the merciful nature of Krishna is so extreme that Shukadeva Goswami became emotional, just describing the elevated nature of the personality of Godhead, Krishna. The verse was spoken by Uddhava. When Uddhava, this is when the verse comes, Uddhava was asked by Vidura to describe, to tell him the good news about Krishna and Balaram and Ugrasena and all the Yadu personalities. So that's where the verse comes. Canto 3, early, this canto. So, hearing this verse being recited, the Vaishnava went into a state of trance and fell off his nice couch and knocked all the paraphernalia in all directions, was rolling on the ground in ecstasy. And then Gadadhar Pandit could understand, whoops, I made a mental offense. He hadn't said anything. Mukunda knew what his thoughts would be because he was just like very averse to worldly pleasures and instead absorbed in or liking spiritual pleasure. And so this distaste for the allurement of material pleasure was part of his way of life from childhood, from a young boy. So sometimes, the point is, sometimes devotees conceal their actual position purposefully so that they don't get honor and fame and distinction and all those things that one can indulge in if you receive them. There's so many nice examples. Another nice example is Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who compiled two of the very celebrated literatures in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, gave the manuscript to somebody else with one request, or two requests. Make it publishable, organize it in such a way that the world can see it, and don't mention my name. He wanted this, he didn't want fanfare. I've mentioned, here's one more, a more contemporary. I've shared this many times, but it made a big impression. Jamuna Dasi, Prabhupada disciple, described an experience that she had in their exchange with George Harrison. George Harrison really liked her singing voice. And he liked her singing voice so much, he said, if you want, I can make you famous. I know how to do it. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And she said, she told me, let me think about it. And then her reply the next day was, no thanks, I don't want that lifestyle. I don't want glamour and glitz and what goes with the lifestyle. Because part of the thing is show business and profile and dressing and decorating and, thising and thating. So he suggested, very well, then let's make a recording. So they made a recording, and at that time it was the marketing was different. It was a 45 RPM. On one side is the Radha Krishna Temple album singing standard songs, and the other side was the Hare Krishna mantra. And the Hare Krishna mantra became #1 selling. So sometimes devotees don't want. And if it appears that some devotee wants, then there's a purpose behind it. Like Prabhupada would sometimes dress fancy, or Bhaktitirtha Swami would sometimes dress like, whoa. I was visiting in Washington. They invited me to go to the Institute House in Washington, D.C., because he had one in Gitanagari and one. I had never been to the one in Washington. So the devotee, Madhvacharya Prabhu, took me upstairs to his room. He introduced me to his deities, introduced me to his wardrobe room. And like so many costumes. A whole closet full of the costumes he wore when he went into Africa. You know, different hats and different coats and different thises and that's and glitzy like a king. For preaching. It wasn't him. But, you know, it worked. So when he came, he was treated like a king. And then when he spoke about Krishna, the king's speaking about Krishna. He was, you know, a brilliant person. Anyway, sometimes people do like that purposefully. But there's other examples. I don't need to go into other examples, contemporary examples, because it helps people. So there are some things, some decisions are made. Anyway, back to Devahuti. Devahuti, being an advanced Vaishnavi, she's not thinking highly of herself. She's deprecating herself. She's not like wallowing in sadness and moroseness and low self-esteem, as they say. She just was very humble. And, you know, this lamentation is a transcendental lamentation. She's looking to her son, or the son of her husband and her, to lift her. That's the sadhu sangha that she now has, and she's lamenting the sadhu sangha that she lost. And the teaching that we're supposed to receive from this section is sadhu sangha, even unknowingly, or even momentarily, or modestly, or whatever, it has great spiritual benefit. And in the purport, back and forth a few times, whether one is approaching Krishna for one's own, apparently, one's own pleasure, or approaching Krishna out of enmity. Both looks like something material. Now, the gopis weren't on the material platform, but some persons think they're lusty, and sometimes that term is used, and then comes this topic that was discussed yesterday, you know, how to engage these lower natures in Krishna's service. The lower nature in Krishna's service wasn't the gopis. Sorry, but sometimes it's spoken like that, as if looking so much like lusty affairs. No one could make an argument. There are sometimes Vaishnavas make the argument, their lust became purified. Or they had no material lust, their lust was a transcendental lust. Either way, you look at it, as this purport is presenting, you contact the Supreme Pure, you become pure. Just by touch. Just by touch, just by seeing. Just even for a moment. In these two celebrated pastimes in the Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj and Dhruva Maharaj, both circumstances, the Lord just touched Dhruva or touched Prahlad and completely transformed. Completely transformed. And many examples from Scripture of just the touch of the personality of Godhead. And the touch of the personality of Godhead under the chin of Kubja purified Kubja. He accepted the service that she rendered, and his just boop, same fingers that chopped the head of the washerman lifted the chin of Kubja, and not only made her straight, but made her pure. Just touch. And seeing, you know, her seeing was, she was seeing. What was her qualification to see? Like the discussion yesterday, what qualification do the demigods have to see the pastimes, the rasa dance? Who gets to see the rasa dance? Demigods get to see. And what do they see? Not the same thing that our great acharyas see just with their ears, the transcendental activities. It's amazing, amazing. Krishna divided himself into so many Krishnas. Now, I don't know, I'm not familiar, if they saw so many Krishnas dancing with so many gopis. So many Krishnas in Dwarka expanding simultaneously, doing different things at the same time, at different times of the day. So the inconceivable potencies of Krishna can be experienced by Narada visiting Dwarka, and then the demigod. So the effect of their seeing isn't the same as Narada's effect of seeing the same. Just this morning, listening to Prabhupada describing a condition of disease. I'm going to end with this. If someone has contracted a disease, the doctor may make some medicine. Don't eat this. Don't eat solid food. That was his example specifically. And if the patient, and take such and such medicine. So if the patient really wants a cure, they'll follow the instructions of the physician. Supposing, then he gave the supposing. Supposing, similarly, this very simple process of Krishna Bhakti is presented, and the symptoms of the disease continue, they linger. So how do you process that? And the answer to Prabhupada, he asked the question, some people may ask, and he answered the question, sometimes the disease is very severe. One person's disease condition is more severe, deeply rooted, and it may take more time. But it's not the error or the shortcoming of the physician or the medicine. It's the severity of our disease. So it may take some time. And we may continue to stumble and fall and, have difficulties or, misfortunes and so many things. Now, there's different. Why does misfortune come into the life of a devotee? There's so many explanations. There's another explanation. Because our infection of the material disease is very, very severe. So good medicine may take a while to act, but it doesn't mean it's not good medicine. You continue taking the good medicine. It's very simple, the hearing and chanting and engaging in service to Krishna and the devotees of Krishna in a favorable way. Okay, so that's it, the Devahuti's lamentation and the potency of sadhu sangha. Yes.
It was very endearing to hear about Devahuti's humility and your elaboration of it. My thoughts were going to Mahaprabhu when Ramachandra Puri came to his residence and criticized him about the ants. And he took that criticism in a very humble way. And my reflection is that for devotees like Devahuti who genuinely feel humble and relish the opportunity to go deep in that humility, that if criticism comes, valid or not, they appreciate it. They take that opportunity to go deeper in their bhakti. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah. At different times, for different persons, or different times for the same person, there can be different responses. Because such, just leave it alone. It's okay. Thank you. Such persons are inspired from within, and there are different moods expressed at different times, and that's nice. It's the different exchanges of Krishna at different times. Now, sometimes it's also very consistent. That's also.
Our second question, in this I remember when I was studying this section in the Bhagavatam that I had this thought, when I read this verse specifically, that sometimes persons approach the spiritual leader, master, with looking for some kind of material, solace, because the spiritual guide is like a father figure for them that they probably never had in their life. And so, something I've heard Krishna Leela Mataji, this is somewhat of a psychological bent, but I've heard her say, we avoid trying to look at the spiritual master as one's sort of lost material father.
As one's what?
Lost material father.
Oh, okay. Meaning making projections of expectation.
Yes, Maharaj. So, thank you for articulating that way. So, yet this verse is saying that it doesn't matter, even if you come with that kind of projection and expectation, the sadhu's association can be very beneficial. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Interesting way to make a nice observation or reflection by saying, is that right? And then comes a phrase that I like to and use a lot is, however, when you take shelter of Krishna, please understand, it's on his terms, not your terms. Because when projections are there, and the projection of expectation isn't met, there's some disappointment or frustration, and then comes with that negative emotion comes other things, behaviors or speech or. It happens sometimes. So then comes another question, like, what's a spiritual father anyways? What's the father figure role anyways? I have my idea of what a father figure role is for me, and then projecting, and then how many persons have a different father figure image in their mind and expectation, and like, it gets pretty complicated. This is the head wobble. Okay, someone else?
Couple questions, Guru. In the translation, there was the phrase "same result," and then in the purport, Prabhupada used the phrase "same efficacy." So, Shishupal, Dantavakra, they achieved Krishna, but wasn't it a different kind of liberation than the result that is achieved by the perfected souls?
But they don't, yes. However, the nature, distinct from other avatars, the nature of Krishna is that they get to the superlative consequence even if they approach with the wrong mood or wrong purpose. So is their destination the same or different from let's say, the cowherd boys who eventually get old and pass on, but their bodies are fully spiritual, so we can't really compare. They have spiritual bodies. They act just like this example yesterday when Balaram stole the calves and the cowherd boys. They were Maya cowherd boys, Maya calves, because you can't touch the spiritual expansions of Krishna, the spiritual forms.
In the description of Pundarik Hridayanidhi, I can understand the lush, the soft pillows and I'm just curious about the hookah pipes. That's intoxication.
That's a no-no. Yeah. Well, who knows if it was just sitting there, if you used it or something. Because it was for show. It wasn't that he's a sense gratifier. Soft pillows and the whole other set of things, paraphernalia. Fine linens and silk and gorgeous garments and ornaments, and that's sense gratification. But it's a show. It's not sense gratification. It's to deflect attention. Pundarik Hridayanidhi is a great Vaishnava. Now, Mukunda knew both his position and his mood of concealing his identity, his spiritual attainments. And he knew how that was going to strike Gadadhar Pandit, so he knew what to do. His singing. Anyway. Anything else? Anybody have anything in the back?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. The lamentation of Devahuti is transcendental, but the word sense gratification.
But what?
Sense gratification word used over here.
Several times.
Yeah, I'm just curious to know why the word used over here.
Because she was feeling like that. That wasn't her. Pundarik Hridayanidhi was in a different mood, and Devahuti is in a different mood, and she's thinking, oh, mundane, me. But fortunately, I got the association of a very elevated person. I mean, he demonstrated his elevatedness by the aerial mansion and the whole thing. That's not normal. She understood he's not just a nice fellow. But she was deprecating herself or admonishing herself or thinking, humbly about herself that her attraction was sense gratification. No, it's not possible, because the personality of Godhead doesn't appear as the son of a sense gratifier. Say it the other way. To have an elevated son, what to speak of the personality of Godhead, she's beyond all that. So why is she thinking that? That's kind of what your question is. And why this word, sense gratification, over and over. Because she's thinking in a demeaning way, or a very humble way, about her position. Although that's not her position. We know that's not her position. She's feeling that way about herself. And this is profound humility. Lower than a worm in stool. Vaishnavas, you think, speak and write in those terms about themselves. That's a little bit lower than sense gratification. A worm in stool. Okay? You have to look at it or hear it with the lens or the ear of profound humility. Okay? Srila Prabhupada ki jai.